Good morning. Hi. Hey. This is continuing from Jess Carlson's daily work with the book Holy Shift. I don't know who the author is. And hey Jess, hey Mom, hey everybody. And if I look up who the author is, I'm going to lose my place in my Kindle. This is when it's aggravating not to have the hard copy when you want to just kind of flip through. Today is August 29th, and we're going to do that reading, and it's kind of long, and it's one of the ones that's kind of has some difficult to grasp concepts in it. Robert Holden, thank you. The concepts for today are forgiveness, and that can get complicated if it's your first exposure to the way A Course in Miracles looks at forgiveness. A little bit about myself is my name is Michelle Wolf. I'm a coach for healers and helpers for animals and people. So if you're healing and helping other people, if you're an intuitive or even a police officer, and you're not taking care of yourself too, that's where I can help. I'm a desire map facilitator. I run virtual online workshops. I have a new one coming up September 15th. My history is since 1996, I've been a social worker, and for many years I was a therapist that specialized in trauma. So I did EMDR and PTSD with adolescents and adults was what my specialty area was. And for 4 years, up until March of this year, good morning, I built and then coordinated a sexual assault response team for a 2-county urban area in north of Denver, Colorado. So that was a little bit of an intense 4 years. So I recognize that it's early. Last night, we live in the woods, and last night I thought we had like a teeny weeny miniature horse in the woods. I heard the strangest like whinnying horse sound, and I was like, I don't know where the tiny horse sound is coming from, but I think we have like a fairy horse in the woods or something. Good morning from Toronto. Actually, it was not a tiny fairy horse in our woods. It is an eastern screech owl that makes a horsey sound. Okay, so don't want to take up all your morning. It's a Saturday and you probably have to go to the grocery store. Good morning. Thanks for the hearts. Tiny fairy horses in our woods that are disguised as screech owls, which are really, really little. Like they're little guys. But it was kind of creepy. So anyway, for August 29th, from the book Holy Shift, I'll read it to you. Hey, Catherine. Are you still in Tennessee? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the hearts. I'll forget to say thank you for the hearts, but please believe me, I see them, and I really appreciate them. Little bundles. Okay, so forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you. Yeah, we are smack in the forest. What you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. It does not pardon sins and make them real. It sees that there was no sin. And in that view, all your sins forgiven. And what is sin except a false idea about God's Son? Forgiveness merely sees its falsity and therefore lets it go. What then is free to take its place is now the will of God. Okay, so that's a big one. I'll just read it one more time to you. Forgiveness in action recognizes that what you thought your brother did to you has not actually occurred. Forgiveness does not pardon sins and make them real and tangible. Forgiveness sees that there was no sin to begin with. And in that view, all your sins are forgiven, the same as all the sins of your brother. And what is sin except a false idea about God's Son? The false idea being that we can hurt each other. Forgiveness sees the falseness, and in seeing the falseness is able to let it go. What then takes its place when you let it go? what comes in is God's will, and that connection to God's love, and that total connection to Source. Good morning, run to the finish. I love that handle. So this can get tricky because when we get hurt, and that's real. Good morning. Hello. It's real that we get injured. So someone hurts us, betrays us, in a small way or a large way. It really is a tangible physical pain. And we have to accept that part, and we have to process that piece. But in the acceptance and the processing, we can let it go and restore our connection to God or to Source. The hard part is we aren't necessarily taught how to process that pain. What we're taught generally is when someone hurts us, only love is real and all else is an illusion of ego. Right. Yeah. It's like, we get it, the concept. It is all false. The hard part is that we live in human bodies that hurt. Our hearts hurt when someone is mean to us or when someone, kills our family in a drunk driving accident or, whatever. I mean, we hurt on small things and large things. And from the book, the workbook section is part 2 of the workbook, section 1 through 7. So it's near the end. If you have the giant book, it's on page 401. So the first part is what we just read. The second part is where you can get into analyzing your story. So what happens is we get hurt, and we attach a story to it. They hurt us, which means this, and this, and that story is different. They hurt me, so it means that I'm unlovable, or it means that I deserve to be hurt. Or they hurt me, and so that means I got to get them back, and I got to hurt them harder, and then I got to hurt their family too. So it's the stuff that comes after that. So an unforgiving thought is one which makes a judgment and then will not raise itself to doubt. So we make a judgment, we decide a story, and we won't question it. And I mentioned this the other day, is that the universe expands with questions and closes with judgment or declarative statements. So that son of a bitch hurt me, and so he's a bastard, and that's that. And that closes us. So we've made a judgment, and we've boxed ourselves into that definition. It's the story our ego creates to justify the way we feel and our reactions to it. Yes. We want to justify how we feel, and we will. So we make our story, and then we find friends and relatives and people close to us who will help us strengthen our box. They'll help us fill in the gaps and make our box even more rigid and more solid and less open to being questioned. So an unforgiving thought is one which makes a judgment and will not raise to doubt, although it is not true. The mind is closed and will not be released. So the mind closes down on its story and builds its box and refuses to look at it and refuses to be released. The thought protects projection, tightening its change so that the distortions in our thinking are more veiled and more obscure and more rigid and harder to break. So an unforgiving thought does many things. In frantic action, and this is where we're talking to everyone and we're talking to ourselves and we're building and strengthening our story. In frantic action, it pursues its goal, twisting and overturning what it sees as interfering with its chosen path. So when we're really locked into a story, we are frantically finding support and evidence for it. So we think of all the other times that person hurt me. We make ourselves right no matter what. So if we can't find, and people who disagree with our story, our box building, are dismissed or subject to more anger from us. Like, how dare you question me or try to make me think differently about this? And this isn't like something you should be mad at yourself about. It's human nature. It's what we do. This process of studying A Course in Miracles and other spiritual texts is learning to undo our tendency to build ourselves these rigid boxes. So it sets about furious attempts to smash reality without concern for anything, like you just said, Mom, that would appear to pose a contradiction to its point of view. Okay? You following me? Forgiveness, on the other hand, is still and quietly does nothing. When you don't have an ego and you don't have a construct, a story that you need to keep in place, you don't have a need to defend. So someone who questions your story and says, well, hey, have you thought about it this way? Or could it have been something different? Maybe they didn't mean it that way. Isn't punched in the nose. If you're in a forgiveness state or a willingness to forgive, let me just say willingness to forgive, then you may be able to take that information in and say, oh, maybe it is. Like, yeah, he might have hurt me this time, but there were 40 other times that he didn't, that he did nice things. When we're in judgment, we can't remember the 40 other things. All we can see is the big thing right in front of us that hurt us. So forgiveness doesn't twist appearances to fit a story. It merely looks and waits and judges not. He who would not forgive must judge, for he must justify his failure to forgive. Forgiveness takes guts and grit and courage, and when we don't want to go there, we have to justify our refusal. We justify our refusal through the story. Questioning the story brings us back to being willing to forgive. Being willing to forgive brings us back to questioning. Like, how can I see this differently? First of all, you have to ask, am I willing to forgive? And the point of being willing to forgive, especially if it's something extremely painful or major, is different for everybody. And no one can say for someone else, well, don't you think it's time to let it go? Or don't you think it's time to forgive? That's not for you to say. That's not for any of us to say. That's a conversation between the individual person and themselves. That's their own conversation. So we don't get to tell people when it's time to forgive. So we ask ourselves, am I willing to see this differently? When we aren't willing to forgive, we have to spend all our time reinforcing our feelings of anger. Right. So we don't have energy to manifest our own dreams. We don't have energy to clean our own house. We don't have the energy that we need to develop our own personalities, because all our energy is out there. Our energy is spent attacking the other person, attacking the event, attacking the concepts of what happened, scurrying around finding support for our defenses. That takes an enormous amount of energy. And how many times have we tried to sleep and grinded an axe and grinded on the story, and you can hear your mind just stuck between second and third gear and just and you're not getting anywhere. That is draining. That is life destroying. You can't build your own life and deal with your own stuff if you're out there in everybody's business. A really good tool for questioning these is Byron Katie's work, Loving What Is. And her, all of her books are good, but that book, and then I Need Your Love, Is It True, is another good one, because she says there's 3 kinds of business. My business, your business, and God's business. And if I'm in anywhere except my business, I'm betraying myself. And so that's what it comes back to. I'm letting myself down when I'm spending more time building this story box to box myself in. So, do nothing then. This is the last one. Do nothing then and let forgiveness show you what to do. If you're willing, yay, Byron Katie, if you have an attitude of willingness and an attitude of questioning, Spirit's going to bring you a sign. God's going to bring you a person. You're going to hear a song. You're going to pick up a book. You're going to be given